That is strange. It's not working. Hold on a second. One more time. Yeah, now it's working. Okay, got it. Alright. Here we go. I'm going to chant the Untitled Kamala. Untitled Kamala, Chandra Suchitan. Jaya Jagaturai Hey no Nitai Binevai Radha Krishna Bhaite Nai Trinakari Daro Nitai Bhai Say some mananahi Prince Janma Gaila Say Pacho Baro Durajara Nitaina Bonino Muke Machino Sunsana Suke Michakule Tigori Bedara Ahankara Matoi Nitai Bada Machuria Asachere Sachakuri Mani Nitaya Karuna Baby Rajirana Krishna Boy Yano Nitai Jarana Tukane Nitaya Jarana Sacha Utara Spakanicha Nitai Bada Satakuru Asha Narotama Portugi Nitai More Korasuki Rakuranga Jarani Rapacha Nitai Bada Kamala Koti Chanu Sushitala Yechaya Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna. Hare Rama, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Haribo, 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 Lichako, Haribo. Okay. Jai Om Vishnupad. Paramahansa Paravitakacharya, all Sutana, Sutashi Shimad, His Divine Grace. Abhaya Charanada Bhaktivedanta Goswami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON, Founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Anantakoti, Vaishnava, Vrinda Ki Jai, Namacharya, Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem, Say Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda Sidwaita Gadadha, Shivasati Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Shri Radhakrishna Gopi Gopinath Swayam Kunda, Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Vrindavanam Ki Jai, Maternam Ki Jai, Jagadadha Sami Ki Jai, Yamhunam Hai Ki Jai, Shivati Glasi Devi Ki Jai, Samveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glory is the assembled devotees, all glory is the assembled devotees, all glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is to Shri Guru and Gauranga, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Budale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swamini Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharani Devashesha Shunyabadi Paschatya Deshatarni. So, we're going to continue with our study of the Sri Caitanya Charitamrta. Unless it's a holiday today. Let me just check. I never check the holidays anymore. Well, today's the 23rd. No, it's not a holiday. So, anyway, we're going to study the Chaitanya Charitamrta, read the 24th chapter of the Madhya Lila, and continue with this study of the different translations and permutations of the Atmarama verse, which Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is presenting to Sanatana Goswami in Benares. Okay, so we're going to go ahead with that. Somigana Timidandasha Garanjana Shalakaya Chakshur Un Meditam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, who so kindly opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge while I was blinded in the darkness of ignorance. So, let's continue. Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Uh-oh, there's something wrong with this computer. Oh, not with the computer, but it's not showing me the windows on the computer. That is really strange. Yeah. Okay. So what I'm going to do is sign out of Zoom right now and then sign right back in. So just be patient, because it'll just take 1 second. You could still stay on And don't worry about it. All right, we'll assign Gopal as. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. I just had too many programs opened up, so I had to close some programs on the computer. That was the glitch. So, let's continue. We're continuing with text 168. Okay, there we go, right in the middle. Continuing with text 168 in the 24th chapter of the Sri Caitanya Charitamrta Madhya Lila. And this chapter again is entitled the 61 translations of 61 different meanings of the Atmarama verse. So Atma Shabde Atma Kahe Yatna Kariya Muniopi Krishna Bhaje Una Krishna Hana. Atma also means endeavor. Boy, it means a lot of things. Being attracted by Krishna's transcendental qualities, some saints make a great endeavor to come to the point of rendering service to him, which we should make a great endeavor. Tashayva heto prayateta kovido nalabhyate yad brahmatam uparyada talabhyate dukavad anyata sukham kalena sarvatra kavirang hasad. Famous verse from the Bhagavatam. The transcendental position cannot be attained by wandering up and down from Brahmaloka, Satyaloka, to Patalaloka. That's from the highest planet to the lowest planet. If one is actually intelligent and learned, he should endeavor for that rare transcendental position. That's Krishna consciousness. By the force of time, one attains whatever material happiness is available within the 14 worlds, just as one attains distress in due course of time. But since spiritual consciousness is not attained in this way, one should try for it. So the problem with happiness in the material world is it's based on a lack. Not a lack meaning 100, 1,000, but it's based on the lack of something, some need that needs to be fulfilled. And once that need is fulfilled, after some time, there's a satiation point. Satiation means no more. Just like if someone cooks your favorite food, whether it happens to be pizza or whatever, and after a while, no more. I'm stuffed. And then you have to engage in Bhoga Tyaga. Tyaga means you have to renounce eating for some time in order to enjoy. And then you get hungry again, which is a pain. And then you have to eat again, and you get a full belly, which is also a pain. This verse was spoken by Narada Muni in Srimad Bhagavatam 1.5.18. Narada Muni was speaking of Vyasadeva, who was morose even after he compiled all the Vedic literatures. In this connection, Narada Muni advised Srila Vyasadeva to try to attain devotional service and nothing else. So this is an interesting story from Srimad Bhagavatam, that Srila Vyasadeva had previously composed so many Vedic literatures, which the purpose of was to understand Krishna. But it wasn't so easy to understand the purpose from reading all those Vedic literatures. For example, if you read the Mahabharata, the original edition of the Mahabharata, it's very hard to understand. Hey, Krishna is God. Got to worship him. That's the goal. You really have to be a genius to understand that by reading the Mahabharata. Of course, if you read the Gita, you'll understand that, but usually people skip over that philosophical part of the Mahabharata. So in other words, Vyasadeva had composed all these Vedic literatures, which we've described before, mainly deal with the three modes of nature and trying to make people pious, step by step, going back to Godhead or whatever, a few baby steps. And what happened is that so many baby steps and Shrutina Vina was so multi-branched are the Vedic literatures, Traigunya Vishya Veda, mainly dealing with the three modes of nature, that actually the Vedic literatures were encouraging people to engage in pravritti marg. Now there's two things, pravritti marg and nivritti marg. Pravritti marg means the path of legal sense gratification. Oh my God, it's legal. And nivritti marg means the path of renouncing gradually sense gratification and just trying to gratify the senses of Krishna. Nirbandha Krishna Sambandhe Yukta Vairagyam Muchate. So, Sarvapadi Vinir Muktam Tattvattvena Nirmalam Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhakti Ruchate. So anyway, therefore, because mostly it's pravritti marg, people just really got into it. Wow, the Vedas allow animal killing. Of course, those injunctions were actually meant for restrictions, not for encouragement. You're saying if you want to eat animals, you offer a goat to the goddess Kali once a month, and you chant Mamsa Kadati, and the next life you'll get a chance to eat me, my dear goatee. I know a goatee. Something different. But anyway, you'll get a chance to eat. So, because there was all this injunctions for allowing people to do all sorts of stuff, at least legally, then that's basically misleading people. You're misleading people in the name of allowing people to do things. Like if I allow my disciples to do so many things, at a certain point, yes, I have to allow them because they're not going to listen anyway. But if I get too lenient and I just speak of allowances, then they will just engage in sense gratification and forget about Krishna consciousness. So that's what really happens, or happened with the Vedic literatures. And Srila Vyasadeva, in spite of being an incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, was really dissatisfied. Look, I've written all these Vedic literatures, I've spoken all these Vedic literatures, and people are not getting any better. They're just getting worse. You give them an inch, and they want to take a mile. That's the point. If you give someone a little excuse for sense gratification, they run with it. And so Narada Muni, his guru, said the reason you are upset is because you are discouraging people in the name of knowledge. So therefore you have to do something to counteract that. And that process of counteracting was the writing of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is not, or does not have any cheating in it. Saddharmasya vabodhaya yesham nirandani matahi achiradeva sarvata siddhyat yesham abhikshitaha. Those who are eager to awaken their spiritual consciousness, who thus have unflinching, undeviated intelligence, certainly attain the desired goal of life very soon. That's okantya. I don't know if that word is used there. It means eagerness, actually, but it's not there. Anyway. So it's a different word for eagerness or enthusiasm. Utsahan nisya darya tatat karma bhavartanat. If you want to achieve spiritual perfection, the Upadeshamrita says you have to have utsaha, enthusiasm, not passion, patience, and patience, tempered by patience, and determination. So anyways, a quotation from the Naradiya Purana. Cha shabda pi arte api avadarane yatna graha vina bhakti na janmaya preme. The word cha may be used in place of a pi, which gives emphasis to something. Thus it means that without sincere endeavor in devotional service, one cannot attain love of Godhead. So the operative word here is sincere, which I'm outlining right now. Highlighting, not outlining. Sincere means what? That I really want love of Godhead. Not simply that I'm doing something, because if I'm simply doing something for Krishna, that may be karma, mijral bhakti, or karma yoga. So text 172. Sadhana gaya anasankar alabhya suchiradapi harina chasvati yeti dvidasashat sudurlabha. Devotional perfection is very difficult to attain for two reasons. First, unless one is attached to Krishna, he cannot attain devotional perfection, even if he renders devotional service for a long time. Oh my God. Second, Krishna does not easily deliver perfection in devotional service. Phew. Even if someone does devotional service, unless you're cultivating the internal mood of attachment. In other words, if you're doing things externally, it's going to take a long time unless you're doing the internal work too. Yeah, I'm chanting my rounds every day. I get them done. That's what I mean. Just trying to get your rounds done so you can get on to your real life, which is Iti Prashadam. So that's what it means. You'll be rendering devotional service for a long time until you wake up and understand and smell the roses that it's time to focus your heart on Krishna. Chant with your heart. Serve with your heart. Whatever you're doing, Krishna says, whatever you do, yat karosi yadashnasi yajahoshin dashi yat yat tapashasi kote tat kurishwa madarpanam. That whatever you offer, whatever you give away, should be done thinking I'm doing it for Krishna, not simply doing it for Krishna. That's karma yoga, sorry. But actually thinking that I'm doing this to please Krishna. What is my motivation? What is my sankalpa? Why am I driving a car? Why am I going to work? Why am I, cleaning my house? Why am I doing any of these things to please Krishna? If one simply sees things going on in the temple as devotional service, and things, not things outside of the temple, then that's not understanding devotional service. Devotional service means whatever you offer, whatever you give away, should be done as an offering to Krishna with love and devotion. As the famous verse, Patram Pushpam Pilam Toyam Yome Bhakta Prayachati. You can offer a leaf, a fruit, or water, but in devotion, in love and devotion. Otherwise, Krishna's not going to accept. As we've mentioned several times before, I've had experience with the deities, not myself, but other people doing things for the deities ritualistically or without the proper consciousness, and Krishna just throws the deity plate on the floor or rejects the offering. Krishna doesn't have to accept something just because you do the mantras. It's not like a Harry Potter movie. For those of you who don't know who Harry Potter is, it's better you don't know who he is. But he's a witch, in Hollywood. And there was this Hermione, his friend, who knew all these different incantations by different incantations, things could be accomplished. Well, the Hare Krishna mantra is not an incantation that if you simply chant it, boil, boil, double trouble, cauldron, burn, and Hare Krishna bubble. It's not like that. Chanting the Hare Krishna mantra has to be, it's a quality. Yes, of course, Krishna is always there in his holy name, but it's the quality that determines whether you're doing it devotionally or ritualistically. If you're just chanting Hare Krishna without devotion, or trying to achieve devotion, or trying to connect to Krishna, then that's really mixed. Yes, you're chanting, it's Krishna consciousness in sort of a direct way. I mean, even Kamsa was thinking of Krishna. Practically speaking, 24 hours a day, probably much more than most devotees that I know. So, as stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 5.6.18, Muktim Ditati Kati Chit. Srila Shukadeva Goswami told Maharaj Pariksit that Krishna readily grants liberation, but does not very readily grant perfection in devotional service. This means that Krishna wants to see that the devotee is actually sincere and serious, and that he does not have ulterior motives. Ooh, that's a hard one. I mean, look into your heart. Look into your heart. I mean, what else do you want from Krishna consciousness? Are you ready to just keep serving Krishna no matter what he does to you? Last verse of the Shikshashtika. If this is the case, devotional service can be very easily successful. Otherwise, it's very difficult to obtain from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This verse appears in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu because basically devotional service is very rare. That's the point from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, because it is the means for controlling Krishna. Krishna becomes controlled by his pure devotee. So, like Prabhupada, if he says something, I think it's called Satya Sankalpa, if he says something, it comes true. Because the pure devotee is like that. He blesses you. Yes, and here's a verse from the Bhagavad Gita. Everybody knows this verse. Tesham satati yuktanam vachatam pratipurvakam dadami buddhiyogam tam yena mam upayanti te. Everybody knows this. To those who are constantly devoted to serving me with love, I give them the understanding by which they can come to me. That's from the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, text 10, obviously. It's one of the 4 nutshell verses. Nutshell verses means the summary verses of the Bhagavad Gita, which actually, if you unpack those 4 verses, it tells you everything, like Ham Sarvasya Prabhu Mantak Sarvam. Anyway, for an explanation, see Adi Lila 149, and also see Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita. Atma Shabde Driti Kahe Darye Ye Rame Daryavanta Hevahanta Kariya Bhajane. Another meaning of Atma is Driti, or endurance. A person who endeavors with endurance is Atmarama. With endurance, such a person engages in devotional service. Endurance is something like patience and determination. So we also talk about Utsaha, which means enthusiasm, but endurance has to be there. Patience. That means you just endure. What does endure mean? That means you continue under any circumstance. Ahaitaki pratita. Very, very important. That's endurance. And of course, this is all mentioned in the Upadeshamrita. You can see they connect these particular instructions, or beads that Lord Caitanya is giving, with verses that Rupa Goswami has written. Muni Shabde Pakshi Bringa Nigrante Murka Jana Kripa Krishna Kripaya Sadhu Kripaya Donhara Vanchana. The word Muni also means bird and bumblebee. The word Nigranta refers to foolish people. By the mercy of Krishna, such creatures contact a sadhu, spiritual master, and thus engage in devotional service. Because even if you don't understand Krishna or don't even want Krishna consciousness, if you come in contact with a sadhu, their bhakti will rub off on you. because it's described by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, where the bhakti is not given by Krishna. Bhakti is given by Krishna's pure devotee. Krishna say Tamar Krishna Dite Par, as it's stated. You have the power to give Krishna to me. Krishna is yours. So really, that's important. So one even inadvertently comes in contact with a pure devotee, because a pure devotee is more compassionate than Krishna himself. Yes, he's more compassionate than Krishna himself. He intercedes. He's like, all right, let's give an example. You got the law and you got a lawyer. So the lawyer, a good lawyer, can get you off, even if you've done a very, very serious crime. A good lawyer can get you off. So the pure devotee, notice I said that, is a lawyer. He represents you in front of Krishna. And just like if you go to court, okay, let's say for a serious crime, you don't represent yourself unless you're an idiot, usually. Even if you're a lawyer, you have a lawyer. Even if you are a lawyer, you have another lawyer to represent you. And you just better keep your mouth shut in court and let the lawyer decide what to do. I mean, he can call you up to the stand and engage in questions. Where were you on the night of November 14th? Okay. But he has your best interests at heart, and he's actually getting you off from a serious crime, just like it's described about one of the symptoms of Kali Yuga, that if you've done some crime and you have a lawyer, you won't do no time. Of course, that means if you have a good lawyer, then you can get off scot-free, as they say. So the spiritual master is a good lawyer. So you're coming in before Yamaraj or whatever, or Krishna, and Krishna says, what should we do with this guy here or girl? And the spiritual master says, Your Honor, Krishna, I am representing him, and I beg you to accept him, because you have to trust me, and here's the law. The law is the spiritual master represents the jiva soul. Anyway, interesting metaphor. Okay. Text 176. Prayo vatamba munio vihagavanesmen Shnekshitam taduditam kalavenugitam Arujaye druma bujan ruchira prabalan Shrinvanti medita darsho vigatanya vachaha. My dear mother, in this forest all the birds, after rising on the beautiful branches of the trees, are closing their eyes and not being attracted by any of the sound, are simply listening to the vibration of Krishna's flute. Such birds must be on the same level as great saints. This is a quotation from Srimad Bhagavatam 10:21-14. This statement was made by the gopis who were lamenting in separation from Krishna and studying how the inhabitants of Vrindavan were enjoying life like saintly persons. That's true. You can hear Krishna's flute, you can enjoy life. Ete linastava yasho kila lokatirtam Gayanta hari purushanu patam bhajante Prayo amimunigana vavadiya mukya Guram vane pinajahat janagatma daivam. Oh, good fortune personified, O original personality of God, and all these bees are chanting about your transcendental fame, which will purify the entire universe. Indeed, they are following your path in the forest and are worshipping you. Actually, they are all saintly persons, but now they have taken the form of bees. Although you are playing like a human being, they could not forget that you are their worshipable deity. And it's a fact, the bees were saintly persons. This is a quotation from Srimad Bhagavatam 10:15-6. Krishna and Balaram were just on the verge of boyhood and were entering the forest of Vrindavana when Krishna began to offer prayers to please Balaram. Sarasi Sarasa Hamsa Vihangash Charugita Hrita Chita Saitya Harim Upasatate Yatachita Hanta Militata Shodrita Monaha. All the cranes and swans in the water are being enchanted by the melodious song of Krishna's flute. They've approached and are worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead with full attention. Alas, they're closing their eyes and becoming completely silent. In other words, the point being made here is if you come in contact with Krishna, even if you're a nirgrantha, like a low-class person, that you're illiterate nirgrantha, then you actually become attracted to Krishna. This is a quotation from Srimad Bhagavatam 10:35-11. In the day Krishna went to the forest of Vrindavan, and at that time the gopis, being morose due to separation from him, were lamenting in this way. Kirata hundra pulinda pukasha abhirashamba yavana kashadayaha yene japapa yadupashrayashrayaha Chujanti tasmai prabhavishnabe namaha. Kiratas, Hunas, Andhras, Pulindas, Pukashas, Abhiras, Shumbas, Yavanas, members of the Akasha race, and even those who are addicted to sinful acts, can be purified by taking shelter of the devotees of the Lord due to his being the supreme power. I beg to offer my respectful obeisances unto him. In other words, there's no prerequisite for becoming a pure devotee of the Lord. It doesn't matter. Dina hina yata chilo harinam mudurila. It's a quotation from Srimad Bhagavatam 2:4-18. This verse was spoken by Shukadeva Goswami when Parikshit Maharaj asked him for a description of the creation. While offering obeisances to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Shukadeva Goswami described the unlimited potencies of Lord Vishnu who can purify the low-born creatures mentioned herein. So I got news for you, Prabhus and Prabhinis. We probably fit under those particular categories of human beings. Woohoo! Most of the Kiratas, Hunas, Andhras, people. Anyway, Europeans, Africans, Actually, it's true. I was thinking about this while I was studying some European history and just seeing how violent, we mentioned this yesterday, I was studying the fall of the Roman Empire. And it was really heavy stuff. How the Roman Empire was eventually invaded by these barbarians from Germany. And some of them from further north, like the Huns, Attila the Hun. Interestingly enough, Attila the Hun was a very strong person, but he died as soon as he got married. Anyway, don't worry, his wife didn't kill him, but the act of engaging in sex life killed him. So anyway, interesting story. But in any case, you see how primitive people outside of India are. I mean, of course, now India, everybody has not everybody, but most people are very much mixed races in India too. But originally, people weren't that cruel in India. If you go back 2,000 years ago, before all the invaders came in, you had the Muslim invaders, the Turkish, all sorts of people coming in, and eventually the beautiful British coming in. So before that, it's just the people were much more peaceful. Of course, then, from time to time, the wars, the Battle of Kurukshetra, I understand that. But it wasn't that people would go through the villages and rape and just tear people to, innocent civilians. The fighting previously was, at least in India, was done between Kshatriyas. That's right. Between Kshatriyas, that was the chivalrous activity. Fighting. Even fighting was chivalrous. Like we find descriptions of Krishna fighting his enemies, or the Battle of Kurukshetra. And at night, they would sometimes, go over to each other's camps and talk to each other. Not that they became the best of friends, or Jarasandha and Bhimsen. So, the original inhabitants of India were just like, I guess, genetically superior, or culturally superior, or more intelligent. I mean, like you see, even right now, that many of the world's biggest corporations are headed up by people from India, especially when you get into the technological fields. So there's something like genetically, I mean, I don't want to be a racist. I'm not from India, so I'm not really a racist in that sense. But you can actually see that there are different groups of people, and genetically people are different. They're not, I mean, everyone's equal in the eyes of God, equal, given equal opportunity. I understand. But, genetically there's difference between people. And you didn't have the same degradation in India that you had in Europe. I'm just hearing about all these different races, and not races necessarily, but all these groups of people, barbarians, coming from the north or coming from the east and attacking Italy. And Italy was a different type of barbarian. They're all barbarians. What can I say? I mean, I'm not saying that anybody's better than anyone else, but it's just horrendous history. But in India, you don't have to that extent. People being tortured and stuff like that until the modern age when you had invaders coming in. So, hope I didn't get in trouble for that. This is a quotation from Srimad Bhagavatam. This verse is spoken by Shukadeva Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj asked him for a description of the creation when offering obeisance to the Supreme Personality of God, and Shukadeva Goswami described the unlimited potencies of Lord Vishnu who can purify the low-born creatures mentioned herein. And many of us in the Western world fall under those particular categories. And I'm not embarrassed to say that, because by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as it's described in the Caitanya Charitamrta, a lame man can walk, a dog can swim an ocean. I mean, have you ever seen a dog paddle? A dog can't swim that much. Or a blind man can see. Have you ever seen a blind man see? No. But by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, then it's a great equalizer. It doesn't matter what your cultural background is, whatever background in any way, then everybody gets equal opportunity. It's a very, very important point. That's why we're not racist, we're not casteist, whatever. So, I know it's a little controversial. Kim Badriti Shabde Nija Purnatari Yanakaya Dukha Bhave Uttama Prapje Mahapurna Chaya. The word driti is also used when one is fully perfect in knowledge. When due to having obtained the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of God and one has no material miseries, he attains Mahapurna, the great completeness, fullness, the highest level of perfection. It takes some time to achieve that. Driti Shatpurnata Jnana Dukha Bhavottama Naptipihi Apraptatita Nashtarta Nabisham Shochanadi Krit. Driti is the fullness felt due to the absence of misery and the attainment of knowledge of the Supreme Lord and pure love for Him. The lamentation that accrues from not obtaining a goal or from losing something already attained does not affect this completeness. This verse is found in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 2.4.144. So if one is complete, then, in other words, according to the Bhagavad Gita, Sochati Nakangshati, there's no lamentation. You have Krishna. Even if Krishna takes everything away, he doesn't take away himself. That's the one thing you don't lose. I remember when I was young, actually, this is interesting. I was saying to my mother, why do I have to go to school? And she said to me something very interesting, which is not completely true, but it leads one to certain conclusions. She says, ultimately, you can lose everything, but you can't lose knowledge. Now, is that true? No. Yes, with spiritual knowledge, that's true, spiritual advancement. But material knowledge, you can definitely lose it. You get old and you can lose your knowledge. My mother lost her knowledge before she left this world. You know, she was an extremely educated lady, and by the time she left this world, I mean, she didn't remember any of her education. She remembered me, which is probably the best thing for her. Not that I'm so great, but but it was good for her spiritually. So, knowledge you can lose, but you don't lose devotional service. Swapamapyasha dharmasha trayate mahato vayat. You don't lose spiritual advancement. So let me read another text. Krishna bhakta dukha hina vanchantara hina Krishna prema seva purnananda pravina. A devotee of Krishna is never in a miserable condition, nor does he have any desire other than to serve Krishna. He is experienced and advanced. He feels the transcendental bliss of love of Krishna and always engages in his service in full perfection. Another verse. Matsevya pratitam te salokyari chatushtayam nechanti sevya purna kutonyat kala viplutam. My devotees, having fulfilled their desires by serving me, do not accept the four kinds of salvation that are easily earned by such service. Why then should they accept any pleasures that are lost in the course of time? Is a quotation from Srimad Bhagavatam 9.4.67. And if you remember previously having studied about the different types of liberation, right? Remember? No, you don't remember it? Okay. That's Salokya, living on the same planet as the Lord. Sarshti, having the opulence of the Lord. Samipya, having the association of the Lord. And Sharshti, well, Sharshti is the opulence of the Lord. So the opulence of the Lord, association of the Lord, the same form as the Lord, and living on the same planet. Salokya. Those are the four types. So one who has fulfilled their desires by serving Krishna do not accept the four kinds of salvation. If Krishna wants them to do it, but they don't want or ask for it, they simply ask for Mama Janmani Janmani Shri Bhavatad Bhakti Hoitu Hoituki Twaye. You understand? That's all they ask for. Okay, on that happy note, now that I've scared you all away from pure devotional service, we did up to 183 today. Hold on a second. Chapter 24, 183. Then we will stop sharing and get to your preguntas. That means questions in Spanish. Hold on a second. I have to unmute you or allow you to unmute yourselves. All right. I think someone had a question in the chat window. Let me just check that first before we get to the devotees talking. Hold on a second. Where's the chat? Okay, here's the chat. Undoubtedly, that's not a question. Anyway, doesn't sound good to me. So, all right. So who has a question or a comment or anything you'd like to say, you can type in the chat window, or you can unmute yourself, or you could raise your little hand if you like. I think someone's... Oh, yes. Mr. Gopal. Undoubtedly. Gopal.
These are my basic.
Yes, Mr.
So
Gopal.
earlier you mentioned that Krishna can't give bhakti, only the pure devotee can give bhakti.
Yes.
But One of the things that is endemic to our philosophy is that one can't give what one doesn't have, and one can't be
That's
something.
right.
So if we're all part and parcel of Krishna, how can we have something that Krishna doesn't also have,
Because
which is
Krishna
the
has given
ability?
it to us to give. Because Krishna has given us to give. It's not that Krishna can't. It's not that Krishna can't do that.
It's just that he doesn't.
But Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says Krishna gives that to his devotees to give. Yes, Lord Chaitanya distributed bhakti, Pran Govinda said, but generally through Lord Nityananda and Haridas Thakur, who sent them out in Sankirtan. And Lord Chaitanya is a devotee anyway. That's when Krishna acts as a devotee. So, but to approach Lord Chaitanya, you have to approach through his devotee. You can't approach directly. You have to approach through Lord Nityananda and his representative. Wala hine na, nayamatva wala hine na lavwa. Without Balaram's mercy, no one can approach Krishna. So you really have to approach Lord Chaitanya first through a devotee. So let's see, someone else in the text window. Hare Krishna, me. How can one engage the mind and chant internally while chanting externally? Does it require a lot of practice? Yep, it requires a lot of practice. The practice that I sometimes do is that I will chant in my mind. Actually, one thing I found really helpful is that when I take rest at night, I chant in my mind as I'm going to sleep. Not out loud, because if I chant out loud, I would never sleep. So I chant myself to sleep. Instead of counting sheep or counting, what else would I be counting? Counting money, counting cars, counting, I don't know what else I'd be counting. Counting, whatever. Anyway, so counting the days until I can go to Australia. I really want to go to Australia. I will go, and I will stop off in Fiji on the way. So anyway, instead of counting something, actually, in my mind, usually I do a lot of counting. In mathematics, I really enjoy figuring things out mathematically in my mind. So instead of doing that, I'll chant Krishna's name in my mind. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Not out loud. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And then when I wake up in the morning, the first thing I do is Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So if you're always thinking of the Maha Mantra, then when you chant, you'll also be thinking of the Maha Mantra internally when you're chanting externally. It's really important to have the mind fixed, because the whole purpose is to fix the mind. Savaimana Krishna Padara Vindayo is to fix the mind on the lotus feet of Krishna. And the way you do that, the mind has to be engaged in chant. It's not simply an external affair. You just chant and you just think about what you're going to eat later in the day. So it requires training the mind to chant. And that means more than 16 rounds, at least off the beats, more than 16 rounds. So while you're sleeping, while you're taking a shower, while you're brushing your teeth, while you're eating, you chant in your mind. So, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. That's the practice. And then the Maha Mantra is always going on and on and on. And so, devotees, I mentioned this before, but I guess it was a while ago. Devotees are always shocked when they're driving a car and I'm the passenger, because I chant every time I see something that may be a little dangerous or they make a mistake while driving. I go, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. And they're saying, why are you doing that? I said, well, it's a habit, and it's a good habit to always be chanting Hare Krishna, especially if you're going to be in an accident. And the last thing you remember in this lifetime is Hare Krishna. What should I be chanting? Oh, I got my cat or something like that, or my dog. So yeah, so it's important to always be chanting in one's mind, especially one has to train oneself whenever any circumstance comes up, unusual circumstance. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, like that. And my parents used to get upset. They were driving in the car, or I was driving, and they go Hare Krishna. So I always do that when you drive, Gopal. It's not that I never do that. You heard me do it. But, it's very common that people get really upset with me as a passenger because I'm not a good passenger and I always tell them how to drive. I'm probably one of the world's worst passengers in a car. So, who else has a question?
Hare Krishna Gurudev, Pooja here. My humble obeisances to
Hare
you.
Hare Krishna.
How are you doing?
I am fine.
Can you hear me clearly?
I can hear you clearly. Yes, very, very clearly.
Okay, I have a question. In yesterday's class, you had discussed about, you know, a life where passing through devotees' life where passing through the mouth, and the non-devotees like through different gates of the body. Now, I
Yes.
have got two examples. Like whenever my mom is with me, so we always talk about this. And my mom used to say that when my grandmother passed away 40 years back, when she passed away, her mouth was open. And similarly,
Yeah.
few months back, my uncle passed away. I mean, my grandmother was not a devotee, but my uncle was like he was a Hanuman Bhakt, but not so religiously, not so
Right.
spiritual. Even when he passed away, his mouth was open. So does that mean the
Yes.
life were left through their mouth, or did it pass through different gates of the
Yes.
body?
No, it usually means the life air passed through the mouth. It's not only the devotees can leave through the mouth; other people can leave through the mouth. Usually, the
Okay.
people live through the other apertures are extremely sinful people,
Okay.
like
Got it.
musicians. No, not all musicians. There's actually some good musicians, but I mean, musicians who take a lot of drugs, intoxication, and engage in a lot of illicit life. You hear about. I mean, I hate to mention, but you hear that they usually leave their bodies in the bathroom.
Mm.
So there's many stories like that. So, but people who are not Krishna conscious can also leave through the mouth. Yogis, they leave through the Brahma Randra at the top of the skull. And if one is a devotee yogi, then they can also leave through the top of the skull too. That's not prohibited. Devotee yogi can leave through the top of the skull, can leave through the mouth. Uh, Either way,
Okay,
actually,
good.
my mother, even though she wasn't a devotee, but she heard the chanting all around her, she left through the mouth, and the devotees were around her, and one devotee in particular, Tulsi Devi, and she saw the soul leave through the mouth. I've been with devotees too when they've left the body, and I've seen them leave through the mouth. I was with my godbrother Guru Govinda Maharaj, and he left his body through the mouth, and other devotees too I've seen leave in that particular fashion. So, but let's worry now about while we're in the body, it's staying in the body. We're not going to leave today, hopefully. We should stay in the body and express Krishna consciousness through the mouth, not have the soul leave the body. It's not true that every time you sneeze, the soul leaves the body. I've heard people talk about that before. That would be absolutely ridiculous. Every sneeze, I sneezed a lot today, and then my soul didn't leave the body. It's still here. Okay, I think we have to end now. Thank you all for
Thank you,
joining
Gurudev.
us. We'll see everybody tomorrow evening, same time, same station. All glories to